You've always been my best friend, and in some ways you're like a brother.
Well, I don't need to read anything else. You get a letter like that from your girlfriend and you know it's over. Just ask Lorraine Baines.
It's like I'm kissing my brother.
But this isn't Back to the Future dissection, it's episode 7 of Oh, Zio. Jeez, this is weird. Before we get started, I guess I have to explain what I'm doing. Throughout this video series and in Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, I have had to accept that there is no perfect sequence to doing episode comparisons. There hasn't been a situation where, for example, Sentai Episode 7 is also Power Rangers Episode 7, and that pattern holds true throughout. Power Rangers condenses episodes, it moves episodes around. Up until now, I've tended to prioritize the Sentai episode order. Not only is it the original show, but it usually has more persistent storytelling that needs to be preserved. In Mighty Morphin Zyurangers, I could jump around the Power Rangers chronology all the time, and it was barely noticeable. And that's largely been true in Power Rangers Zio, until now. I knew this was coming, and it actually works out a little easier than I worried it would. It's the Power Rangers Zio 3-parter, There's No Business Like Snow Business. So titled because the writers of Power Rangers are apparently Ethel Merman fans, but also to give the production an excuse to film a ski lodge vacation story. But they also need Ohranger footage to fill the action quota, despite the fact that Ohranger never does a story like this at all. In fact, most of this 3-parter is original footage. Because of that, Power Rangers Zio takes 2 unrelated Ohranger episodes and shoves them into this story. Backwards. This is so weird. The first 2 parts use footage from Ohranger episode 11, while the 3rd part uses footage from Ohranger episode 9. Ohranger has settled into its episodic formula, but these 3 Power Rangers episodes really need to be covered together. So yeah, we're doing Power Rangers order this time. And to start off, we're comparing a single Ohranger episode to 2 Power Rangers episodes. I swear my entire perception of reality is turned upside down. The Refrigerator of Love is so named because Baranoia unleashes a monster, Bara Printer, that causes people to fall in love with machines, be they copiers, be they tricycles, or be they refrigerators. Shohei comes up with a plan to mitigate the damage by tricking Acha into believing that he should use Bara Printer to make all the humans fall in love with him. And that's what they do. The brainwashed humans carry Acha through the streets. The other Ohrangers wonder what the point of this plan is. After all, their main problem is that they cannot fight Bara Printer without falling prey to his love beam. Shohei is able to trick Bara Printer into shooting his love beam into a mirror, reflecting it and causing Bara Printer to fall in love with Acha. In order to save Acha from being wuv-wuved to death, Kocha destroys the love circuit, allowing the Ohrangers to fight the monster. The whole thing's kinda cute. Over in No Business Like Snow Business, Tommy, Kat, and Billy go to the mountains for a ski vacation so that Tommy can get over his recent breakup with Kimberly. They ski, they snowboard, a lot. There is so much B-roll of winter sports. King Mondo sends down cogs to remove warning signs from ski slopes. The teens meet a famous winter sports star and former VR trooper, Heather, who immediately befriends them and takes them to the most dangerous ski slope on the mountain without having any idea what their athletic capabilities are. Sounds dangerous. Tommy saves her life, and she falls in love with him. However, Tommy's emotions are still a little raw, and he keeps getting called away to dub over Ohranger footage, which makes things awkward. And yeah, you might have noticed these stories have almost nothing in common. That's because the Ohranger stuff is relegated to the B-plot. Rocky, Adam, and Tanya stay home because the show can't afford to send everybody on location, but that means they're around to see their friends randomly start to fall in love with appliances.
He's never been into video games.
Yeah, Tanya, because when you see a man fondling an arcade cabinet, Remembering he never liked Donkey Kong is the appropriate response. You know, when I summarize the A and B plots back to back, it suddenly becomes pretty obvious what the connective tissue could have been. They're both about love. But for some reason, Power Rangers keeps those plots completely separated, both narratively and geographically. That leaves almost nothing left of the Ohranger story. In part 1, the only major Sentai footage used is the scene where Clank is chased around by the monster, now renamed Robo-Cupid and regendered into Blanche from a streetcar named Desire.
Time to search for my first victim of love!
Oh, and there's Shohei in the American footage. But he blends in so well with the tarp that I didn't even notice him the first time I watched. This love chase, though, is not the culmination of a plan, it's just there to demonstrate what the monster can do. And that needs to be in the episode because aside from one scene with Bulk and Skull, Robo-Cupid doesn't interact with the American actors at all. The heroes just walk into the juice bar to see Ernie in love with his blender. You know, I was actually wondering if Power Rangers would even adapt this idea, given that they skipped over this premise in the Knuckleball of Infatuation, the one where everybody swallows balls and falls in love. As you do. I'll never forget we were cheated out of seeing this. But apparently society progressed enough in those 3 years that it's okay for kids' TV to show the pure love between two young men and their motorcycle. They still have to throw in a no homo line, though.
Heck of a game. Heck of a game.
The Power Rangers never worry about falling under Robo-Cupid's spell because all of the fight footage takes place after the love circuit has been destroyed. That's a shame too, because the untransformed fight scene in this episode is really good. You might think that Goro and Momo were separated from the others in Ohranger, and that's why Power Rangers pulls out Tommy and Catherine, but no. In fact, Power Rangers Zeo has to cut around the shots of those characters in the fight footage until Tommy and Kat arrive. Adam has no particular role in this story, so it's odd that the fight footage keeps giving him prominence. Honestly, it's a waste of a perfectly good premise. Its usage here never ties into Tommy's breakup with Kimberly or his potential relationship with Heather. It just feels completely obligatory. You know, you have to have that stuff no matter how random it feels. That's not to say there's no business like Snow Business doesn't contribute anything of value. Whatever you might think of Kimberly leaving Tommy for someone else and telling him via letter, it is a story with dramatic potential and takes advantage of the lengthy continuity the show had already developed. It's obviously hamstrung by the fact that Amy Jo Johnson isn't in the show, despite what the credits claim. And frankly, I just don't feel this plays to JDF's strengths as an actor. But then again, the show is far more concerned with sports footage to allow it to go anywhere. It's a nice change of pace, however uneven, and it results in beats you wouldn't normally see in Power Rangers. The first part ending on Heather's literal cliffhanger and its decidedly non-Power Rangers solution of having the characters tie jackets together to save her is a good use of the unique story. Having the second part end on the cliffhanger of Heather is slightly hurt because Tommy breaks their date to do Power Rangers stuff is pretty weak. We're just not invested in these characters enough for that structure to work. What I will give the Power Rangers episodes credit for is that writer-director Douglas Sloan takes advantage of the lack of adherence to formula to make some great directorial choices. We see the letter in close-up get handed from person to person before it reaches Tommy, presumably because Kimberly is such a terrible girlfriend she doesn't even know Tommy's actual address. I like when the camera tilts down the juice bar to transition into a tilt down from the sun to the slopes. The cogs are revealed through a news camera POV shot, and I don't know why, but this shot where Kat is being restrained while cogs in the background carry away the warning signs cracks me up. No episode's perfect though. In this sequence of Kat demorphing, the background behind her totally changes between shots. If I did not know this was all original, I would expect this was one of those less than seamless transitions between Japanese and American footage. Even when they have the freedom to not connect their footage to Ohranger, they can't shake the cobbled together aesthetic. Let's score these, and this is going to be hard given how largely unrelated they are. And, well, also how the Power Rangers story isn't over yet, but the shared footage element is over. It's weird. There's no perfect solution, but here we are. For story, Power Rangers crafts something outside of its wheelhouse, which I appreciate. However, it's bloated with pointless B-roll and grafted onto an unrelated story. Ohranger is pulling a stock story out of Sentai Past, but it's still fun and far more focused. I'm giving it to Ohranger. Moving on to characters, this is also difficult. Shohei is actually demonstrating some level of charisma. I don't know if he's demonstrating character though. I feel like you could slot anybody into this story and it wouldn't be any different. It's fine, it's a step in the right direction, but... Again, the Power Rangers characters barely scratch the surface of the drama, but at least this is clearly a story that has to center around Tommy. I guess I'll give it to Power Rangers. Finally, for action, Power Rangers has a lot more of it to be sure, and in some cases it kinda smothers the story, but on occasion they use the skiing and snowboarding to good effect, like Kat chasing the cogs down the slopes. I think it would have been more fun if we could have gotten some morphed Power Rangers on skis, but regardless, this stands out far more than the good but typical action in Ohranger, so I'll give it to Power Rangers. I honestly thought Ohranger would win this one, but no, it's Power Rangers. I don't know how good I feel about this though. As we transition into the final installment of this collection of stories, Power Rangers gets less weird, and Ohranger gets more weird. But they still have absolutely nothing to do with each other. That's enough preamble, let's just get into it. Obviously, part 3 of There's No Business Like Snow Business continues the story from the last two. However, now that the trio have left the mountains and its gratuitous ski footage, the story finally comes into focus. Tommy can't pursue a relationship with Heather because every time he does, the giant head in a tube he works for keeps yanking him away. And since Tommy can't ever come up with a better excuse than sighing and shrugging, Heather eventually gets fed up and disappears. Once again, there's a good idea for a story in here, that of the personal toll imposed by being a Power Ranger. This story is predicated on Kimberly ending her long-distance relationship with Tommy, a relationship that only became long-distance because Kimberly finally prioritized her dreams over her duty. Now Tommy can't even hold down a new potential relationship. The consequences of his responsibilities are hitting him from all sides. I don't know though, the story struggles to land with me because it doesn't seem like Tommy even cares. It's Billy and Kat who keep trying to hook them up. Heather's infatuation appears totally one-sided. Kat lures her to Angel Grove for a dinner date without even consulting with Tommy, and he always seems like he's searching for any excuse to get away from her. There is absolutely zero chemistry between these two characters.
Did you miss me?
Wow, what steamy dialogue. I'm not even sure if this is a combination of underwhelming acting and writing, or if this is intended to come across as tepid. Tommy is just days out from having his heart broken by his best friend. It's understandable that he might not be into this right now. Besides, the twist is that the actual through line to these episodes is Kat's story. She is selflessly trying to set Tommy up in order to make him feel better, despite it becoming increasingly obvious that she'd rather be with him herself. The story ends not with Tommy and Heather, but with Tommy and Kat dancing together. And that element plays pretty well. It would play a lot better though if Heather didn't feel like such dead weight, if Tommy really hit it off with her only for it to blow up in his face. Because without that investment, it just feels like the first two parts are spinning their wheels. That the monsters plot has little to do with Tommy's and Kat's internal conflict really doesn't matter this time. The two halves of Tommy's life pulling him in totally different directions is what ties them together. But for the sake of segueing into the Ohranger story, let's take a look at it. The defoliator is a monster that wipes out trees and flowers to the point of creating a greenhouse effect that in turn kills more plants and introduces a heat wave. It provides an opportunity for the characters to give a lengthy PSA about global warming. It's important stuff to teach kids, but it comes across so awkwardly didactic that even Zordon seems a bit weary of it.
You are all well informed.
Yes, you are all well informed, so could you please stop preaching at me? This was actually set up halfway through the previous episode, but is only really playing out now. Still, that sounds so devastating it couldn't possibly be undone by killing the monster. It's a good thing we skim over the implications of that by never showing the defoliator interact with any flora, let alone destroying whole forests. Yeah, difficult as it is to believe, the monster's Ohranger equivalent has nothing to do with plants. It's a scorpion-shaped monster named Bara Darts, who shoots poison darts at people. Amazing. So the plot in the Ohranger episode once again has nothing to do with romance or skiing or whatever. What it's about is Bara Darts shoots the three guys and the girls have to get the antidote before their teammates die. No, actually, what it's about is Judy's unexpected betrayal of the team, which turns out to be a ruse to get the antidote. No, actually, what it's about is Momo creating holograms of the three guys, which turns out to be a ruse to get the antidote. No, actually, what it's about is Miura turning the clocks 10 minutes ahead so that Momo will think the boys have all died. What? Okay, no. Actually, what this episode is about is an excuse to see the girls get into a sexy cat fight. That's the answer I'm sticking with. This episode is all over the place. Based on the title, Suddenly a Traitor, the focus is supposed to be Judy's betrayal of the team. Would you believe me if I told you that takes up all of 4 minutes of the episode? I'm not exaggerating. It's exactly 4 minutes. There is no focus here. It's just a bunch of stuff. Again, to have an excuse to make the girls roll around in the dirt while Judy wears a very short dress. I don't deny that it's a fun, funny episode. In fact, it's the first time an episode of Ohranger has been fun or funny. Okay, I have to step back for a minute here. Brief content warning in the middle of our fun little children's TV show examination. On March 20th, 1995, the terrorist group Aum Shinrikyo released the nerve agent sarin on Japanese subways, killing 14 people and injuring 1,000 others, some of whom have since died. This occurred just a few weeks into Ohranger's run, and it's common knowledge that the show then changed course to be more lighthearted, a change that began with this episode. But just because it's common knowledge, does that mean it's actually true? I'm actually asking here. I've been working on this video series all year. I watched the whole thing back in January. I have not been able to find a single primary source that corroborates this. The Power Rangers Wiki makes this claim, but it doesn't seem to be backed up with a source. Whenever I ask someone who brings this up if they can provide me with a source, they haven't been able to. People just seem to accept that it's true, and maybe it is. It would certainly make sense. Heck, when I was making my videos on this subject 15 years ago, I was passing off a lot of common knowledge, including stating that Carranger was lighthearted because of the Aum Shinrikyo attacks. But I'm older and wiser and do this for a living now, so I'm not as willing to just throw this stuff out there without proof. If you have some, here's your invitation to show it because I would really love to know one way or the other. I don't claim to be an expert on this franchise. It may sound like I have an axe to grind over this claim, but I don't. Where I start to get a little suspicious is that it often comes part and parcel with the idea that Ohranger's original story direction was discarded in favor of this watered-down comedic slop. And that rings hollow to me for a couple of reasons I've been building up to over the videos I've made thus far. For one, yes, I see a shift starting with this episode, but that also seems like the inevitable direction the show was heading. Did anybody really think the Invasion 1999 opening was going to be what this whole series was about? Episode 8 pretty definitively establishes that those invasion fleets are useless against Ohranger Robo, and that the only path forward is to send down a new gimmicky monster every week. Yeah, that could be because of the terrorist attacks, but it could also be because that's what Super Sentai always does. It's hard not to keep comparing this to Jetman, both because my Sentai exposure is relatively limited, but also because they have very similar aesthetics. Jetman is pretty dark. There's death and murder and insanity and lost love and unrequited love and melodrama of all shapes and sizes. It also features a sentient soup monster who traps one of the heroes in a giant ramen cup. If all of those things can coexist, so can everything we've seen in Ohranger. Besides, the darkest parts of Ohranger are still to come, well after the attacks. That's point one. Point two is that I struggle to accept that Ohranger's glorious original direction was abandoned because I don't see anything in the first 8 episodes to indicate the show ever had a direction. It's already become a running gag for me to say that the Ohrangers are the blandest leads I have ever seen, that I know nothing about them. And I'll go ahead and be upfront with you. That's never really going to change. These guys never develop into compelling characters. But at the very least, they're having some fun now. So maybe that's a result of a tonal change, maybe it's just the series finding something of a footing. But if it is the result of a change, whether that change was because of those horrible attacks, or simply because the showrunners realized that the show was boring as hell, it's a change that needed to happen. I just don't know if it needed to be ushered in with something as hackneyed as women be shopping and the men have to hold the impossibly tall stacks of packages. I haven't gotten to use that one in a while. Alright, let's score these. For story, I think it's going to depend on what you value. As far as just being a silly romp, Ohranger is definitely more fun to watch. However, I just can't get over how disconnected its elements are, allowing none of them to really go anywhere. The title plot, which again covers 4 minutes, doesn't even have the slightest impact on the story as Jury's plan fails. It's all just twists for the sake of twists. Judy is evil. Here are holograms. The clock was wrong. Power Rangers finally finds its focus in Part 3, and while it's a little too late, it barely squeaks out a win. For characters, I must refer you to what I first thought about this episode when I watched it in January. How can you do a story about a character acting out of character when you haven't yet established who she is in character? How am I supposed to be shocked by Judy's betrayal when it's literally the first thing of consequence she's ever done? It doesn't hold a candle to the relatively sophisticated slew of emotions from Kat that actually furthers her and Tommy's characters. Power Rangers wins. For action, Power Rangers seamlessly marries the Japanese fight sequence to its American replacement right before the girls start de-transforming. But Ohranger has some good stuff, including a long, uninterrupted fight take. It has gags with the darts, it has a funny football sequence with the antidote, and yeah, it has the extremely gratuitous girl fight that is incredibly stupid and ultimately unmotivated. But sometimes stupid is fun. I'll give it to Ohranger, but that doesn't stop Power Rangers from winning. I have to admit, I feel a little dirty. You want to talk gratuitous? Gratuitous is padding out a 3-parter with a bunch of shots of winter sports. I kind of hate myself that No Business Likes No Business won for all 3 of its installments, because, frankly, it kind of sucks. Ohranger needs to step up its game, and yeah, I think it does after this point. I'm starting to run a little long, so I'm not going to keep you, but I can't wait to revive the comments reading part of the video next time. I'm really hoping you provide me with some good reading material, some interviews with the creative forces behind Ohranger that reveal their direction for the show. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want you to give me. I also need you to help me out on Patreon so I can continue to eke out a living while making videos that you enjoy watching and that I enjoy making. I am very grateful to everyone scrolling by in the $5 a month and higher categories, and I'm just as grateful to everyone in the $1 a month category. Every little bit helps, and every person who helps is telling me that what I do means something to them. And that's awesome. I'll see you next time!